Hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I don't know about where you are, but here in New Jersey, it is a bit cloudy and dreary, but that does not stop the show. That does not stop the fact that we woke up this morning and we're fortunately in our right mind, and we're pretty psyched about that. So I want you guys, hopefully you listen to the intro that asked you to go ahead and share, grab your girlfriends, grab your guy friends, whomever it is that you want to grab, because guess what? The big ask is a subject that I think everybody would want to listen to, and more importantly, about it, how it impacts our destiny, right? And you may think to yourself, oh my gosh, destiny just sounds like a really big word and a big scope. But we can narrow that down to what are your immediate goals that will get you to your ultimate destiny if that makes you feel a bit more comfortable. But anyway, to talk to you today, I am going to be speaking with Sonja Keeve, who is our international podcaster, amongst other things. But before we bring her, to talk to you, to let you know, the topic for today is the big ask and your destiny. And of course, who am I? I am Judy Ann Chung. I am your brilliance activator. I help women to basically activate their destiny and soar. Another way that I like to say it sometimes, I help you to activate your brilliance and soar, because guess what? It is inside of you. All right. So now let's move over to Sonja. Sonja, would you just want to say a bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Judy, for allowing me this opportunity today. My name is Sonja Keeve, and I am the CEO of Sisters with a Voice podcast network, where I teach young women entrepreneurs how to launch powerful podcasts in 30 days or less. I am also the founder of the Facebook community group, #Podcasters Rock. And it's a group consisting of aspiring and seasoned podcasters who truly want to kill it in the game of podcasting.
I love it, love it, love it. So as you can see, I mean, who wouldn't want to learn that in 30 days, right? So that's an awesome thing. Now, guys, hopefully you're getting ready to let us know where you're watching from. You may feel free to drop that in the comments. And of course, as always, with any of my lives, I love them to be interactive. So don't be shy. Go ahead and post your questions. We have the expert here, right? So we're gonna definitely drain her brain, right?
Yeah.
So okay, right. So you see, she's totally in agreement with you
Yes.
guys to go ahead and do that. All righty. So the first thing that I want to ask you is, so me being the brilliance activator, right, where I focus a
Mm-hmm.
lot on courage and basically just us taking calculated risk, right?
Right.
Of course, and a lot of just for the purpose of this discussion, right, calculated risks that are connected to your goals, right? So just
Right.
talk about those uncomfortable feelings that you may experience, right? That could possibly lead to that self-doubt and, in terms of your self-talk to yourselves.
Well, great question. So I really think this whole idea of what we say to ourselves in those moments when we're feeling less than our best, that it's usually right when you know you're supposed to be doing something, you're on the right path. That's really when that voice kind of comes into your ear, telling you you
Right.
can't do it. You're not equipped enough. And usually for me, the way that I kind of block out the noise is
Mm-hmm.
that I continue to speak to myself, to tell myself that, listen, this is what I was born to do. This is what God placed in me to do. And
Right.
so I do it anyway. And a lot of times it's doing things when you're scared is usually
Mm-hmm.
the best time to do it, because you can't go anywhere from but up from here. So if you
Right.
stay in that place where it's negative and you're like, you know what, I can't do it, I tell people, do it anyway, because I would have never been in the places and been in the spaces I have been if I allowed that self-talk to continue to drive what I was going to do. So I just simply just allow myself to just be bold enough and brave enough to do it anyway.
Right. And of course, for those of you who are listening, feel free to pop in and say, how do you manage those, negative self-talk, which, says, oh, not now, maybe later, I shouldn't, I'm not good enough. I don't feel that I have enough experience, because The truth is,
Yeah.
if we really were to think back, we know a lot of us would possibly experience those. We may not be willing to admit it, but the truth
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
There is no man or woman alive who's never experienced that, right? Even me as a brilliance activator, okay? So
Yes,
let's
exactly,
keep it real
exactly.
here, right? So, okay, so if I heard you correctly, one of the things that you said you do is that you said basically, if it's something that you're supposed to be doing, right?
Hmm.
Then
Yeah,
because it's something that you're supposed to be doing, and even if you're scared, you just go and do it anyway. So you
absolutely.
basically you have nothing to lose, as you said. You can
Yes,
only go up from there. I mean, and
yes.
that's a great way to think, because you know I wrote it down here for later on, but I'll just say it now. I always say, okay, well, there's only a few answers that will occur, right? And in this
Yes,
case, what you just said is like, okay, I can only go up from there, because I never really started. I had nothing in place.
right,
So, I mean, where's there to go but side up, right?
right.
Okay, awesome. So, I also have a program called Activate Your Destiny, right? Where
Hmm.
it's basically focused on helping people to fulfill that destiny. So, do you think that once a person become aware of their destiny, so tied into something that you just said, where you said, if you know that this is something that you are supposed to be doing, that is
Hmm.
part of your destiny, right? Do
Right.
you then think that people need to do additional self-assessment, as well as, personal and professional enhancement to get to that thing that they're supposed to be doing, aka a destiny or goal?
Yeah, absolutely. This life and this journey that we're on, we're always learning. We don't
Mm-hmm.
always have the answer. So, of course, if you're just becoming an entrepreneur for the first time, you don't
Right.
have all the answers. So, a lot of times you kind of have to just self assess, well, what are my assets? What are the things that I innately do well,
Mm-hmm.
that no one else can do better than me? And that's
Right.
kind of where you need to start. And then as you continue to grow in your business, or you can just in life, in anything that you do, if there are areas that need more strengthening, then
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do is kind of invest in programs, services, coaches, finding those experts that can really help you fine tune those areas of weakness,
Right.
because we all have them, but it starts with us. Let's just first evaluate kind of where we are now. What do we know now? Because
Right.
we all have certain knowledge and skill sets, and
Mm-hmm.
so you can build upon that skill set by doing that self-assessment, and then you can kind of continue on the path of your destiny of where you're trying to go to.
Right. Awesome. I love that, because part of what I also do within different coaching programs that I have, you literally just spoke to some key points in there, where you say you look at the situation and you basically assess, where are my potential gaps? And then
Right.
how am I going to fill them, whether it is I work with a coach or whatever it is filling those gaps call
Right.
for. But
Hmm.
guys, I also want to share an interesting nugget with you of basically how I connected with Sandra, in terms of what um, what caused me to really reach out to her. Right. So some of you may know the story, some of you may not know the story. But basically, we were in the same group, domination. Was it try domination, right? In
Yes.
that group, right?
Yes.
So we're in the same group, which basically, for the most part, is a lot of coaches and different service providers for different things. And it's a group that teaches you a bunch of different kind of lessons, that it has for systems, a whole bunch of different things that it has, different kind of
Yes.
programs, right? Which is a great group.
Yes.
So one of the and it's run by April Franks, and she had another podcaster who's well known, was Amy Potterfield, right? And of course, Sony decided that she's going to make the big ask, and that's why I labeled this the big ask, right?
Yes.
Because she decided that, okay, when April says, "Does anybody have any questions?" Right? Most people were asking questions about how to do this, how to do that. Of course, Sony, he or she decided, no, I'm going to go for the big ask, right? So she
Yeah.
asked, hey, can I have Amy Potterfield, the Amy Potterfield, as a guest on my podcast, right? And
Yes.
sure enough, April worked her magic, and the answer was yes. Now, as you can see, we literally just proved Sonia's point because she's saying, listen, I have nothing to lose. I can only go up
Mm-mm.
from there because if she said
Yeah,
no, I'm still in the same neutral position that I was, right?
that's
You know,
right. Right.
so so instead she decided that she's going to do her big ask and
Yeah.
obviously have the medium was to April France. So April then put it to Amy Potterfield and the answer was yes. So the reason why I chose at that point to tell the story is just to tie into what you just said. You go ahead
Yeah.
and you do it anyway because the most you can do is go up from there. Now, what I'm
That's
also
right.
going to ask you to do is just to expound on the story a little bit and just tell us what was running through your mind during that time, and take us on the journey a little bit with Amy Potterfield and the podcast interview, etc.
Yeah, so I'm so glad you're sharing the story because I will tell you, everyone who's listening or tuning in today, it literally has changed my business. So
Awesome.
so as she said, Amy, was a special guest inside of our group, and like she said, everyone was kind of asking, the typical questions that you ask an influence, like, how do you do it all? What's life like for you? All of those general questions we typically ask. Well,
Right.
while they were literally asking the questions, I was sitting there like, thinking in my head, it would be really cool if she would be a guest on my podcast show. I wonder if I can figure out how to way to get that in there and just ask her, would
Right.
she be willing to do it? And so as the conversation is going on, we actually inside of the chat could type in our questions. So I just
Mm-hmm.
asked April, I said, hey, my question would she be willing to be open on someone else's podcast show? And
Right.
and so I didn't get a response yet, and the conversation is going on, and I'm thinking, and the funny thing is, if you're in Zoom, you can see the questions. So April is asking everyone's question. She had skipped over mine, and I'm thinking, dang it, I guess I can't do it. So I'm starting to feel like, oh well, okay, well at least I tried. That was kind of my attitude.
Right.
And literally we're getting down to this end of this fireside chat conversation, and April brings up and says, well, my community group members wants to know, like, would you be willing to, if you were open to be a guest on someone else's podcast show? And I'm sitting there and my heart is racing and I'm listening and I'm looking, and she was like, sure. I was like, oh my God, oh my God. But she never said yet, Sonja wants this to happen. So I'm like screaming, like, open up the microphone. Let me say something. Let me ask my question. And she said, well, Sonja, go ahead and ask your question. And without even thinking about it, I literally was screaming inside my spirit. And I just was like trying to be calm and say, well, Amy, I'm trying to be all professional. I would love for you to be a guest on my podcast show. And she was just as sweet as could be and said, absolutely, just get with my assistant and we'll make it happen. I was like, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. I hear it, we got off the camera, and I literally was running around my studio like, yes, this is going to happen. Yes. So I think, and I didn't even think about it. I didn't give it a second thought. And I say this story to tell you all, if I had hesitated and not even put the question out there in the atmosphere, none of it would have happened. I mean, in that moment, Judy, she could have said no. And like you said, it would have been like, okay, no harm, no foul. But you know what? I at least can say I asked the question. And because I asked, she said yes, and the Bible teaches us you have not because you ask not.
It's not
And so
right.
so that's been my story. And we had an amazing interview. And from there, it has been just an amazing new relationship that I developed because of that partnership with April. And I'm forever, forever grateful.
So I guess the big takeaway is go for it. All
Yes,
right. So,
absolutely.
so you know what? So one of the questions I had for you too was based on that wonderful story, and of course you remember, right? Like in the group, and like you were saying, right? I'm watching Zoom too, and I saw your question, and I wasn't the one who asked the question, but I also noticed that APL seemed to have gone above it, around it,
Yes,
right? And she
yes,
wasn't really saying your question, right? So I was like,
yeah,
okay. But then we also learned that what April was actually doing was thinking about how she was going to make the ask,
yes,
right? And if
yes.
you know anything about April, she's very strategic, right?
Very,
So,
very.
so what appeared to us, and that's also another takeaway and another
Yes,
lesson that we can learn.
yes,
Don't always buy into the appearance of what it is, because it
yes,
may not be the reality
yes,
of what it is, right?
yes.
Because we may have thought that because you saw April, she asked the questions above it, she asked the
Yep,
questions below it, and she just
yes,
left yours there. I'm like, okay,
yes.
what's happening? So I saw it too, but obviously I was not as emotionally invested as you are because it was your
Right,
question, it was your ask,
right.
but I'm still observing. And
Yeah,
then when she came out and she said, you thought I wasn't going to ask, huh?
yeah,
I thought
yes,
that was absolutely wonderful, right? So,
yes.
so I guess if I was to say to you, right,
Hmm.
framing around this awesome story, right, in terms of
Yeah,
the big ask, and now you have just clearly explained how it has impacted your destiny. What are your goals that you had for your podcast, right?
yes.
So if you had to create a bumper sticker, what will it say? Keeping that in mind.
Oh my God. The funny thing is, I mean, it's already Nike's slogan, and it's how I've really lived this latter part of my life.
Uh huh.
Just do it.
Oh,
Just
okay.
do it. Just do
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Because it is one of those things, if you don't, it's always you live with that regret.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because I've learned so much over the years, because in my past, just being full transparent, I missed out
Mm-hmm.
on so many opportunities in the past because I was afraid to ask, thinking I wasn't adequate enough. I didn't have enough experience and exposure.
Right.
And I learned, since, when I had my own kids, I tell them, be bold, be brave. So I'm like, if I'm telling my own children to do that, then I need to emulate what I'm asking my own children to do. So I'm very intentional now about just simply asking and just doing it. And it has guided me well. And I'm not saying, and let me just put a caveat here, I'm not saying just do it and just everything that you do, because there are some things that weren't meant for you. But when you know instinctively inside of your core values of who you are, your makeup, you know that is the thing that you're supposed to be doing, then you need to step out, because God gives us the tools. We just have to be willing to walk in it. And so for me, asking, my whole goal has been, I wanted to grow my podcast. I wanted to grow my listenership. And I knew if I could land someone like Amy Potterfield on my show, that would open up the doors for so many other women who would say, because by habit, women, we tend to, we don't pay attention until we start getting the attention of influencers. So when you start getting the attention of other influencers, then people start to pay attention, like, this is something real. This is something I need to be a part of. And I can tell you, since that interview, I have more women that now continue to reach out to me, that want to collaborate, be on my show, simply because they see where this show is going, and they understand, if someone like Amy Potterfield could say yes to being on my show, not knowing anything about me, then there must be something special about what I'm doing, because people are tied into you, because I am the brand of my show, not Amy Potterfield. But the fact that I could land her, that only added the sweetener, to the deal for anyone else who wants to now come onto the show.
Okay. So also what I was saying, Sonia, can you mute on your
Yep, I
end?
can hear you now. Yep.
Yeah, no. Can you mute because I'm picking up movement? Okay. So no, one of the great things is basically, as you said, right? Uh, people like to follow success. So as you said, now there are more people who are willing to come onto your show, reach out to you to collaborate. Because as you said, they're saying if you can land an influence such as, Amy Potterfield, then of course your program got to be even more credible. Now, one of the things the comments that we have here that I absolutely love. So of course, we bumper sticker, you said we were borrowing from, Nike slogan, which is just do it. But I also like what Natalie Ann had here. She says the big ask gets the big answer. Absolutely, Natalie Ann. I mean, come on, as you said, that's the whole purpose of it being a big ask, right? So,
Yes.
that's by definition, it is. Yeah. Um, okay. So, the other thing that I want to mention before we move further is that it's just for those of you who have not joined yet, I'm having also, it's kicking off today, but it's not too late to join, which is a 5-day Activate Your Destiny challenge. And basically, we help to walk you through, which you got emails, and also within my group called Destiny Warriors, we support you live for those 5 days. And of course, at the end of the 5 days, we got a huge surprise for you. So for those of you who have not joined, feel free to go ahead and do so. And I will just drop the link there for you, if you wanted to go ahead and join. And if you can't get it here, it is at the top of this live. You will also see it. So feel free to, of course, join that challenge. Alrighty. So moving on from there, right? So let's come back now to you, right? So you made this big ask. You got the big answer, right? Which was
Yes.
yes, the big yes, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still elated for you. Now, and you spoke about how your business have grown, and you also spoke about you being the brand. Now, from a personal and professional point of view, right? So inclusive of your business and you, what additional growth have you recognized that you needed as a brand, as a person?
Um, Definitely, I think my presence and being consistent to show up all the time.
Right?
I think not being able to, I think before I didn't think again I was good enough. I just thought, here, I'm just having this show, probably, I don't know if people are tuning in. But recognizing that even when you think no one's watching, they
Right.
are. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to always be consistent and continue to show up. Two,
Right.
just be confident in who you are and what you so be very clear about that. What is it
Mm-hmm.
that you want to give to your audience? What problems can you solve? Because I think if you can do that, you'll attract the right tribe, because that's how you and I found each other, just kind of
Right.
finding, being in the same tribe. And I just really say, and then have fun. I think
Right.
I think that's important, because, entrepreneurship can be kind of tasking at times, but you've got to really understand your full why. Why is it that you do what you do and how you do it? And just knowing, had fun celebrating those wins. So
Mm-hmm.
something like that was huge for me. Absolutely, I celebrated, but that same person who's not super familiar to people, I celebrate them in the exact same way as if it wasn't Amy Potterfield, because their story mattered. They chose to say yes to come on to my podcast show. So I celebrate every woman for being brave enough to come onto the show, because again, they could have went to anyone else, but they chose to come on Inspiring Nations. I lost. Yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay, the reason you can't hear me is because I muted myself. Okay.
I was like, oh my, I'm like frantically like, I can't hear her. What did she say? Okay.
You said to have fun. This is part of the fun of being live. End of story. Over and out. Okay. No. So I will repeat what I was telling myself to the rest of everyone else. Okay. So I was piggybacking on what you said about knowing your why. By the way, it was hysterical to watch your face to think that something was wrong on your end. Anyway, we digress. Okay, compose yourself, Juliet. Okay. But anyway, so what you said about knowing your why, right? So what I was saying is that Natalie was hysterical. She goes, we're going from the big ass,
the big mute, right? Exactly. Jesus, take the wheel. That's all I got. That's all I got.
You're gonna make me cry. Well, you did say we were supposed to have fun, so hey,
yes, there it is.
Right? Okay. And as you can see, we're like attract like, right? We got a lot of smart pants down the line. But anyway, as we compose yourself, and listen, smart pants, all the smart pants out there, right? Make sure you take advantage and join that 5-day Activate Your Destiny challenge, right? It's totally free and you get a guide to go along with it, right? So even if you don't need it, you know somebody who do. Alrighty. So what I was actually trying to say was that, Sonia, you spoke about your why, right? And you spoke about all the different things and just being connected to the right people, et cetera, in terms of the tribe, how we came across each other. Right. But one of the things that I also learned from one of the other colleagues of April was Allison Bird, where she spoke about understanding your what, right? Because if you don't understand your what, then sometimes your why actually changes, right? Like you have people who, like the example she gave, which was really true, right? Where she says, like, at one point her why was her mom. Well, life happens and mom unfortunately passes away. Then you now have to, okay, so what is the other reason I'm doing this, right? So I really took a lot away from that at the time. So just with our listening audience, so to just not to take away your why per se, but then also think about your what, because your why can change, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if you remember hearing that too or not, but it totally resonated with me. Now, so we spoke about the bumper sticker. Now let's move on to what you do. So for those of you for you guys who are interested in creating a podcast, this is specifically, if I can pronounce the word, for you, right? So just give, a few tips for someone who wants to, start off with a podcast, whatever. You go for it.
Yeah. So I always, with all of my students, anytime I start my new session where I teach and train entrepreneurs to start a podcast, the very first question I ask is, why do you want to start a podcast, right? And there are a myriad of reasons why people start it, but you've got to kind of understand your why first to even begin this journey. And then you'll want to ask yourself, who is your ideal audience? Who are you trying to target? And you want that target to be so specific, because the content that you create around your avatar is going to determine whether or not your show is going to be successful. Because we tune into podcasts all the time, but there's got to be a specific audience that you're trying to reach with the message that you have. And then you need to thirdly ask yourself, what must your listening audience walk away with as a result of listening to your show? So there needs to be some type of call to action, because you want to keep your listening audience beyond just hearing from you week in and week out on your show. You need to be leading them somewhere, whether that's your website, your products, your services, so that you can continue that relationship with them long after the show is over.
Right. So I love that. So if we were to, put it in place, it's similar to any other business in
Yes.
terms of understanding who your avatar, what they look like, who they are,
Right.
so the content. So of course you can, yeah, okay. So definitely, hopefully that helps you guys in terms of just, some information in terms of getting started. Now, going back to the big ask and how it impacts your destiny, right? Now, we spoke about how you felt. We spoke about the nerve, the actual great story that was, attached to it. What are some of your future goals in terms of getting to your destiny that, you're working on right now that you're comfortable sharing with the listening audience?
Well, one of the future things, there's a couple of projects I've got in the works. One of them is creating a podcast workbook,
Okay.
because folks, need those foundational steps of what do I do first, second, third, fourth, and so on. And it also will give them a guide of something that they can go back to and kind of assess how they're doing, how their show is doing.
Right.
So that is one piece. The second piece is I'm very big on giving podcasters exposure, because statistics show that women only represent 22% of all podcasters in the world. So
Well,
my goal is to teach and train over 100,000 women how to start their own podcast. Because when you create your own platform, they say if you're not getting a seat at the table, then bring your own table.
right.
Your podcast show is going to do that for you. So we're in the, so that is kind of my overarching goal, to kind of teach and train more women how to do a podcast. And then thirdly, I want to host my live event to bring podcasters from around the world and have my own podcast conference to feature women, by women, for women.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Feature women, by women, and for women. I like that. So we spoke about also knowing your audience. So the content of your podcast and knowing that you're an international podcaster is what?
I'm sorry, say that question again.
So the focus of your podcast.
Yeah.
So if you could tell our listening audience if there's anyone who wanted to follow you.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. So the name of my podcast show is called Inspiring Nations with Sonja Keeve, and I'm on all podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and I'm looking for women who have stories of how they inspire others every single day. And so, if you'd like to be a guest on my show, I would love for you to email me at skempowers. So that's S as in Sam, empowers plural at gmail.com, and my team will send you the information of how you can be a guest. There is not a fee to be on my show, because I truly believe in allowing women to kind of share their stories and have that platform to share what they do and how they serve. So that is how you can reach me. I'd like to invite you, if you are a podcaster or even aspiring podcaster, to join my Facebook community group called #PodcastersRock. And just to let you all know, we just had a magazine launch on Friday, where we are in Vision and Purpose Lifestyle magazine, where myself and 10 other podcasters were featured in the magazine. So we continue to get exposure like that, and we continue to get invitations to get more focus around women and podcasting. So thank you so much for allowing me to share that.
Oh, most definitely. So I typed we had your email type. If you can just make sure, it says skempowers@gmail.com, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And then for your Facebook group, it was Podcasters Rock.
Hashtag Podcasters Rock, all one word.
All righty. So I am dropping that in the group also, in the chat rather. So #Podcasters Rock for her group. So feel free to join that if that is something that you'd like to learn more about and participate in. All righty. So now since this is also attached to, your brilliance, right? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about brilliance, it's always connected with confidence. It's always connected
Mm-hmm.
with your faith, right? Some people are
Right.
like, faith, how does that come in? Well, think
Mm.
about it, right? I have the confidence that when I muted myself, you would all hear me, right? So obviously, right, it is there is a affiliation, right? So I had that faith also within my PC working, that when I press that unmute button, that
Yeah.
you were also going to hear me. So there's always an affiliation there, because you may have confidence in something that, oh my gosh, I'm not really unsure, but I know that
Yeah.
if I take the first step, it
Yes.
will become easier and easier, because
Yes.
of course one of the ways of building confidence is through repetition. All
Yes.
right, so I just want to also give you 3 tips for making the or four rather for making the big ask. And the first one, which Sonia also alluded to, was clarity of your goal. So in other words, we take this back to destiny now. Okay, what do
Yes.
I envision for my destiny? What is that goal that I envision, if that takes it in more bite-sized chunks for you? So just get clear on that, right? Then the next thing that you also should do is banish the fear of asking. Because as Sonia decided, like, you know what? I'm too scared. I am not going to make the ask. And also, if she chose to blend in like the rest of us, right? Asking about systems and how you do this and all these things that are artificial busyness work, though they're needed, but they were
Right.
artificial business work. They were not the type of questions that was going to get us the big yes, right? So banish the fear in being willing to make that ask. The
Yes.
next thing that I would also say is be okay with seizing the moment, right?
Yes.
I wrote on the top of this when, we on the live, where I said my mom used to say, strike while the iron is hot. Of course, as a mom, as a child, you're like, okay, yeah, mommy, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But
Yeah.
now as an adult, I know
Yeah.
what she actually meant, right?
Yeah.
Because again, going back to your story, had you allowed that moment to miss you, when
Yeah.
April says, do you have any questions for Amy Potterfield?
Yes.
Right? And you did not seize that moment, you would not be where you are today. We wouldn't have this conversation,
Absolutely not. Yeah.
right? We wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Okay. So that was banish fear. And the next thing also is that, remember, there's only a few set of answers that you can get. Yes, no, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And all of those 3 answers have opportunities in them.
Absolutely.
All right. And I know you must be thinking, well, I didn't get what I want. Well, you didn't get what you want, so it can open another door.
Yes.
All right. Or you can find another way around it to ultimately get what you want. Or you may be redirected for something much better than you thought you wanted, because sometimes we don't dream big enough. So
That's
just
right.
again to recap on the 4 tips is to get clarity on your goal, get clarity on your destiny. And sometimes you may not be totally clear, but you're clear on the tugging that's inside of you, that you know what you're supposed to be doing. And the second one is that it says, seize the moment. All right. Or as my mom says, strike while the iron is hot. Then the next thing is to also banish fear of asking for what you want. And then remember that there are only 3 answers: yes, no, maybe. All of those answers within them have the appropriate opportunities that are waiting for you. And then I also want to also quote Ruby D, who says, the greatest gift is not being afraid to ask a question. So I want to change that around a little bit to say the greatest gift is not being afraid to make the big ask. All right. So, guys, I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, I just want to share with you. Remember, I do have that challenge going on. It's completely free. It is Activate Your Destiny 5-day challenge, and it actually ends on Black Friday. And during that time, we have a awesome surprise for you at that point. Again, if you want to go ahead and join the challenge, there is the link as well as above here. So I just wanted to come to you, Sonia. Is there any last words that you'd like to share before we move forward in ending this broadcast?
Well, first, I want to just thank you, Judy, for this amazing opportunity to be in your side of your community. And I hope that what your audience heard is going to convince them now to just do it.
Right.
Because for me, and anything I do in life, one of my favorite quotes by Wes Moore is, I would rather flirt with failure than to never have danced in my joy.
Right. And that's a perfect quote to end on, because I think that's what you did. Right. In terms of, but you got the opportunity to, dance in your success. Alrighty. So guys, again, my name is Judy Ann Chung. I'm your brilliance activator. I basically help women to achieve their goals, strengthen their confidence, activate their brilliance, and soar. If you'd like to get in contact with me, of course, you can always hit me up here on Facebook. You can DM me. My website also, which is Coaching You Upward. All things social media, Coaching You Upward, of course, except my LinkedIn, which is my legal name, which is Judy Ann Chung. Sonja, thank you so much for being here with me. This has been a fun interview.
Yeah.
Snafus and all.
Okay? Yes. Yes.
Snafus and all. It just makes it even more real. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you so very much for saying yes
Thank
to me.
you.
And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to really revel in your story and revel in your big ask, and just seeing how I wanted to create a visual for people, just to be able to also hear, to know just how making that big ask can truly impact your destiny. So that's what I hope you guys took away from this, because that was what I was hoping to achieve by having Sonja share her story. So again, thank you so much. Wakanda love. Okay.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye-bye for now.